All right, this is going to be the spot. I like this. So it's the 1st of September 2024. My name is Evan Strong. It's Sunday, it's the Sabbath day. I usually make videos geared around shoelaces and clothing and the discrepancies in the tying of the shoes and the lacing of the shoes and our clothing and the seams and the tags and all the things that affect our bodies and don't let them do their natural things. And I have a lot of content that I've already posted and more to come as it does on that. But man, this shirt is not how a lot of people would prefer theirs to be. I don't really care about wrinkles. Anyway, so I'm going to be designing clothing. That's going to be coming. I know a lot about the human body, and my human body didn't used to work the way it does now. Usually in the intro of my videos, I do like a demonstration. I'll stand on one foot, or I'll like rotate my shoulders or whatever, but yeah, I'll do something. I'm just gonna kind of stand on one foot for a second. Try not to bump this camera. Point is, like, my body works really well now, and it didn't used to, right? I mean, I just have natural balance, rotations and stuff. Stuff I've shown in videos. This one here is more of a story, and it's a story about my, sorry, I got mosquito bites all over my legs. Just been outside a lot of it's filming videos about the human body. This story is about my physical body and the journey I've had with it throughout my 25 years so far here meaning on this earth. Yeah, because I make a lot of very bold claims. I say a lot of things that probably sound pretty accusatious, or like I'm, being insensitive. I understand how some things that I say can sound, and I think once you listen to this, if you do, it'll give some context as to why I have the like passion behind what I say. And also you'll be able to see that I have an understanding of the pain people are going through from personal experience. So yeah, when I'm just gonna kind of go through my life. Again, the only purpose of this video is to give context of my own personal, like, physical experiences, because I always say that within these videos that I try not to speak on anything that I don't know really well, and I say that bold claims can be bold if they're true, and I say these kind of things. This video is good if you have a little bit of a problem with me being so, like, bold about stuff. Because I was born with a heart condition, and I've actually had 6 total heart surgeries in my life. And when I was born, I don't know all the stories so well, because a lot of it I was pretty young. Most of the stuff that I don't remember, I was either 7 or younger years old. So it's not really about telling what happened exactly or whatever, but again, just to show that, hey, I've been through some major stuff, for the sake of relating. Because pretty soon after I was born, I had a surgery. I was born with a hole in my heart. They had to go in there with like a patch, basically, serious, and patch it up. So I got a big old scar, probably like an 8-inch-ish scar on the side of my right rib cage, even though my heart's over here. I'm not really sure again, right? So they did some, like a shunt. It's not about the specifics for the sake of this video, but they did something. I have a condition called tetralogy of Fallot, which, again, I'm not gonna even try to explain it because I don't even fully understand it very much. Like, my body works, that's great. Like, seriously. But what would happen is when I was really young, if I got really upset and like cried a lot or like got angry or whatever, I'd actually turn blue. Like, within your body, you have oxygenated blood and deoxygenated blood. If you look in your veins, you can probably even see, right? They're blue veins, and then sometimes you can see red veins, I guess. The blue veins are full of blood that's going back to your heart or back into your respiratory system to get re-oxygenated to then be pumped through your body again. And then once the oxygen's used up, it goes back, right? Your lungs play a part in that. There's little tiny veins in your lungs called capillaries, and when you breathe, the oxygen mixes in with the blood that's in those capillaries, and it's not really important for you to necessarily understand for the sake of this video, and I don't even understand it that well, if I'm being honest. Like, what I mean by if I'm being honest is just like, I'm not trying to even talk about myself other than just giving context for my understanding, right, of people's struggles with their bodies. So yeah, the point is I had a surgery here, and then I had a full-on, you have your rib cage, right? And if you feel where like your throat or like your collarbones meet right here, this is called your sternum, that like bone in the middle where the rib cage meets. I've talked about the sternum a lot within my content like this, how it's the center line of your body, right? Directly behind it is your spine. I talk about the nose. Those are the three things I usually mention as being like the center of our bodies. Now mine was entirely cut in half, twice, right? So yeah, where this, like where your that little like divot in your throat is and that bone like meets right here, from right there, so you can kind of put your finger in there, to right where you can kind of put your finger up under right here, that entire strip right there, longer than my, well, no, pretty much the exact length, very close to the exact length of that, was sliced and opened enough for them to get into my heart, right? I mean, entirely, my entire rib cage cut in half. It happened twice. Once was when I was really young, and then the second time was when I was 7 years old. So I got a big old like 8-inch scar here, got a probably about 8-inch scar, shout out to the surfers here, and yeah, so I mean those are some pretty major surgeries. I mean, especially an open heart surgery. And I feel like an open heart surgery is something people have heard about quite a bit, like out of the surgeries that there are. It's like, it's pretty major surgery. Yeah, it is. Right, so then they put me back together. I'm pretty sure it's titanium wires, right? Because, yeah, it is. I've heard that too many times for that not to be right. They use titanium and like just almost like twist tie your rib cage back together, because it's got to be held in place so then the bones can just like heal again, right? So yeah, that's pretty major surgery to have twice. Right? So because your ribs, they connect in the front and then they come around and they connect in the back, and so opening this, I mean, your spine is, I mean, connected by your ribs to your sternum, right? That's just quite a big thing to go through, really. It wasn't fun. I mean, I just remember tubes going into my stomach. I've got little like scars like this, you know, different sizes, like down in here, because they have tubes they put into you, like drainage tubes and stuff. It's a whole thing, man. Seriously. So that was a big thing. And when I was 17, they thought I needed a pacemaker. This is when I say don't listen to doctors. I got a pacemaker. If you don't know what a pacemaker is, it's a little box about this big. I use the word box, but it's like a little flat thing. It's kind of like a dollar coin, maybe a little bit bigger, right? In the United States of America, we don't even use those anymore. Like, they don't even make them. but you can still use them if you have them. It's like this big, and they put it right under your clavicle, your collarbone. They just make an incision. This is what the doctors told me. It's funny. They're like, we're gonna make just like about a 2-inch incision. We're gonna stick our fingers in there, open up a pocket, and put the pacemaker inside. So they did that, and it didn't heal up. 2.5 weeks went by with me having a pacemaker. And wait for this bike. And I was 17 years old. So 2.5 weeks went by with me having that. And well, the point is, I guess, what a pacemaker does is it's a little electronic thing with a battery in it, and they run leads down into your heart. Leads meaning just like wires, right? 2 little wires from it, and it shocks your heart, right? So I've pretty much always had a heart rate in the 40s. When I sleep, it gets down into the 30s, but some people have that. Some people can be extremely healthy athletes and have heart rates in the 40s, right? Quote unquote normal resting heart rates like 60 something beats per minute, somewhere around there, even maybe a little bit higher. It's average. Mine's always been in the 40s, and it still is, and it's fine. But they wanted it to be more around 60, right? And at the time I was going through other stuff, I was having heart palpitations. There's this thing called tachycardia or bradycardia. Tachycardia is the high end. It's like an abnormally fast rhythm that your heart kind of gets stuck into. It's not needing to beat that fast, but it's kind of like right? I think of like a drummer, right? And then bradycardia is like on the slow end, where your heart will go into like a randomly like slow rhythm and then kind of come back to normal. So I had tachycardia around this time when I was 17. I'd be like exercising or whatever. I used to ride bikes a lot, mountain bikes, and I'd be out biking or whatever, and my heart would all of a sudden just like just start going so fast and like a weird beat. And so when I had that pacemaker surgery, they also did what's called an ablation, which is like a cauterization, right? They take they either like burn it, well, they burn it, but it could be like with cold or heat, right? Like cauterize electrical connections within the heart, because that's what the heart is. It's an electrical system. That's how it pumps, right? Your body actually has electricity in it. That's how, when they, like the defibrillator thing, when they go like clear and then they shock you, because your heart has its own electrical system within it naturally. And so when they do that kind of thing, they're like jump starting you like a car, right? So that's what the little pacemaker would have done, is like just like on a smaller level, basically like a defibrillator, right? Kind of. So they went in when I was 17, same surgery. This was a 9-hour surgery, okay, for the pacemaker, but also those pacemaker surgery is probably like an hour or two. It's probably a pretty quick surgery. I don't know exactly, but probably just like that, a couple hour long surgery. But it was 9-hour surgery because they were going in and cauterizing all those electrical connections within my heart that were causing it to beat wrong and stuff and get like stuck in weird rhythms. So when they did that, right, they went through here, the little about 2-inch incision for the pacemaker, but for the ablation within the same time, like while I was still under, right, the anesthesia, yeah, anesthetics, they went through my groin. So you have like where your hip flexors are, right, where my hands are meeting right here, you have like major arteries there coming up your legs, right, that feed your legs blood from your heart. So it's like a thicker artery, right? You've got capillaries, those really small veins, and you got veins, and you got arteries, which are the major ones. Probably heard of the arteries in the neck people talk about. It's just a common artery that gets talked about. It's just a big vein, basically, a supply vein that takes blood out to like the major extremities of your body, right? Like this would take it to your brain, and those take the blood down to your legs. So they made just like a really small little incisions in my groin and went up. I'm pretty sure it was both sides. Yes, it was. Oh, maybe it wasn't at that time, but I've had incisions in both. Okay, surgery I almost forgot to mention, just because it's, if I'm mentioning stuff, we'll talk about it, but we'll finish this. They go up through that artery with like a, I don't even know how they get through your actual artery all the way to your heart, but it's like a very simple surgery. I mean, it's like there's like basically no invasion, right? It's like this is like an invasive surgery, a full open heart surgery. That it's like a really small little thing, like this big, like I don't even know the size of a. It's really small, almost. I mean, I don't know. It's a small little thing, just because they have to only be able to get into your artery, which is small. So it's just a really small little incision. They go up through that artery to your heart, and they cauterize those connections. So anyway, that all happened at the same time. It was a very long 9-hour surgery. I'm gonna go back a little bit. When I was 15 years old, that's what I was thinking about just now. It was my other groin, the other like side of my hip flexor, right? They went up, and I have what's called a melody valve. So my pulmonary valve within my heart was leaking, and as well as my tricuspid valve. I mean, I've had stuff going on with my heart, you know. So a melody valve is like this, it's like a man-made valve, and it's within like a mesh, like a metal, pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it's metal. Yeah, mesh. It is, because you can see it in the x-ray. It's like a metal mesh casing around this like valve. Valves in the heart usually have like 3 like flaps, right? So it's like a circle, right, as you picture an artery would be, and then within that there's 3 flaps like that, right, to like to let the blood through, and then they seal. Okay, so I've had some leakage going on, and I still do have slight, right? Always will. Just that's how my heart is. So that's cool. That's such a weird thing to say. I don't know why that felt so like, I don't know. It felt that's weird. That melody valve that they have encased in that like metal, the reason it's in that is because they shrink it down, right? So it can pop open in a sphere, or I mean a cylinder, right? So they squish it down, they put it through the artery, and then once they get it right there, right in place of your actual pulmonary valve, they pop it open, right? So it just goes in, and it like, if this is my pulmonary valve that like is natural for my body, just, you know, the body created it, well, you know what I mean? We were given it, but this one, that this melody valve they put in there, and it just replaces it, right? So yeah, man. The point what I was saying is, it's important to mention, I am a disciple of Jesus Christ. I wholeheartedly know that Christ lives. And so when I was saying he created our bodies, and that's something I talk about all the time within the videos of the human bodies that I talk about. You know, we're handcrafted, we're pulled from the clay, you know, or pulled from a rib. Biblical, right? So I've had all that kind of stuff going on with my heart, right? So the reason I mention that, though, is more, I think this is also kind of a little bit of a teaching moment. I'm gonna take a little step back for a second, because, well, I don't know if I mentioned the age. When that, when that pulmonary melody valve was put in, I was 15 years old. Okay, so I kind of went back, because my pacemaker slash cauterization ablation surgery was at 17 years old, okay? But I think I need to just take a little second and kind of give a little teaching moment on the gospel, because at least something I could touch on is I know a lot of people who have a little bit of a hard time with Christianity. One second. I know that a lot of the time the reason people have kind of a hard time believing that we could have a good God and that he could be there and here and now the way that he is, some people get a little bit caught up on how can bad things happen, you know? Like, how could I still be Christian? How could I still be a follower and a believer and a disciple of Christ, Jesus Christ, after having such a hard time with my own physical body? If he's a good God, why would he cause you to be born with a hole in your heart? And why would you have to go through all these major surgeries and those kind of things? You know, I understand how that could be something to wonder about and something to ask me personally, because I've got a really, 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 really deep-rooted conviction, and I know that Jesus Christ is our God. And we're supposed to struggle. And we're supposed to have someone that we have to rely on, because if I could just do it all on my own, then I wouldn't need to have a God to rely on, right? If I could be my own savior. But when I'm laying in those hospital beds, after having my entire sternum chopped in half, tubes coming out of me, I can't even move, barely can even breathe, you know, struggling to just hopefully make it through what could have possibly been a life-ending surgery. I mean, anytime you have a surgery, it could, I mean, you know, it could be a life-ending kind of thing. In those moments, am I gonna be my own savior? Am I gonna just decide, hey, I'm tough and I'm gonna do it all on my own and jump out of this hospital bed after I've just had titanium close my whole chest cavity up, you know? I mean, what it does is actually strengthen your conviction and your connection. Because realizing that, yeah, I couldn't do this on my own. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding? I just got chopped in half. Yeah, that's what it does, is it actually, it deepens your conviction to realize, like, yeah, I mean, I made it through that, and now I'm like standing on one foot all the time, and like I threw 3 gainers the other day out of like one-footed backflips on the ground right here after like a long time of not doing any flips. And how do I go from being this like little baby being cut open laying on an operating table, and being at you know, many other ages also being cut open, like not able to even lift my own arm to get myself water, or ice chips is really all they give you after a surgery for a bit, you know? How do I go from that to like doing these kind of things, right? I didn't do it. Like, so we go through these hard things because it's like a little bit of a, I want to say this in the right way, because it's a remembrance, but a wake-up call to where we came from, because we came from his presence, from the presence of God. We were created by him and through him, and in all things were created through him. This earth was, and we were everything. So I understand that argument of how can bad things happen, you know? I've been through some stuff. I've been through enough things. If we're just talking about physical things like that, right? To where I get it. I mean, if you don't open yourself up a little bit, but that's funny. I got literally opened up, because that's what it'll do, is when you get kind of torn apart emotionally, physically, whatever it is, in those moments you realize you can't be your own savior. I mean, if I were to just think that I had the final say in something like that, laying there, having that major of an operation, like, you know, I'm in charge, I'm gonna be fine, and I'm gonna decide that. how could I? I mean, these doctors have my life in their hands. They could decide if I live or not. If we really had the say, is what I mean. So, yeah, because there's complications and stuff like that, you know? And seriously, complications, huge, major ones could happen, and you could still make it through. When it was like supposedly impossible, yeah, because nothing's impossible with our God. And I'm kind of a walking miracle, you know? That's why I use myself as examples in the videos I make. That's why I do the physical, almost silly things at times, like standing on one foot and stuff, because I couldn't do that very well before. So being able to use myself as the example, you know, that's cool. So anyway, yeah, we have a good God, and he proves that to us by having us go through things that we couldn't do on our own, to show us that he's bigger than anything we could ever face. I'm glad that I kind of stepped back and realized that I could use that for a little gospel lesson, because yeah, I talk about going through hard times, man. I know some hard times, all right? I really do. In more ways than just the physical. Yeah, I've been through it. So, yeah. All right, I mean, not to rush out of that, but I'm going to continue talking about my physical body's journey through this life. So, because that's what I've also mentioned too, is how I can talk, kind of speak for anybody on any part of the earth that could see my videos, because we're all universally designed by the same person, the same all-powerful, almighty God, in his image. So that's how I can talk and speak for people, because we're all pretty much the exact same, right? I always say, I mean, you could be missing a limb, or you could have a deformity, or you could whatever. Yeah, I mean, that's just part of you, though. The rest of you is still there. You're still a human being, you know? So that's how I can speak for people that I've never even met, as far as giving, you know, tips that will help, is what I mean. So, anyway, I know I didn't really get into the surgeries very much, but that's not really important. It's more just to give an understanding that, hey, my body's been through some stuff, and look where it is today. You know, kind of that contrast of, like I'm saying, I was laying in a hospital bed, I couldn't even like get my own self water, and now, you know, you've seen the things that I can do physically, right? So, but what I will talk about while we're still on the subject of surgeries is doctors always told me that I'd have to be kind of taking it easy. My dad always told me that too, because of my heart, right? I've had some big things happen to my chest. Take it easy. Doctors always said I could never do any kind of contact sports. They always said I had to kind of like, just kind of sit back a little bit. If people are out there doing like major exercise, just, you know, there's always like a don't push it, right? So as a little kid, just wanting to play, that hurts. Because it's not just about being a little kid. It's like, okay, so the rest of my life then, I have to like what? Just sit on a couch? That's kind of what I felt, you know? That's what everyone's telling you. It's like, hey, don't exert. Don't do too much exertion. Don't do too much exercise. Don't go out there and, you know, I mean, really what it sounds like is, hey, don't have fun. Don't have a full life. You know, it's like, really? So then you feel even more small than a lot of times we just already do as humans, you know? Which is an okay thing to feel, because again, right, we are small. We're supposed to be, because we have to rely on our God, who's bigger than everything. And he proves that to us time and time again, if we allow ourselves to see it. So, you know, I was always just told, because I remember coming home from the hospital when I was 7. That second time that I had the full major open heart surgery, I remember coming in the front door of the house and like you know, my parents were bringing me home from the hospital. You know, I was there for probably a week or two, kind of recouping. And they always told me, don't even get too close to doors. When you go to open a door, like, be very careful to where if somebody opens the door from the other side, they can't open it into you, because that could really damage your chest that's just been opened up. I mean, it's those kind of things. You start to feel like you're so incapable, like you can't even do anything. Like, what, every time I walk up to a door, I have to like make sure I'm to the side of it so that when I open it, it can't potentially like bump into me the slightest, you know? And so then you're thinking, all right, you say no contact sports, but what are you really saying? No contact? Like nobody can even touch me? And that's the other thing, is so sterile, right? When your body is in the condition mine was in, your immune system is something they're so cautious about. Everyone has to scrub their hands like till they're almost scrubbing their skin away before they can even come into the room with you, because you're just a little baby in a kind of a rough condition. You know, I mean, I was turning blue, I had like little oxygenated blood. You know, then when the surgeries happen, now I have to like really rest, and people just I almost can't be touched at those points in my little young childhood. So it gave me a lot of weird beliefs, you know, and about people and the distance they had to keep from me to keep me safe, right? And that creates a lot of things that then travel over into other things within my life. And that's not something that was ever fun to experience. So yeah, I always there's a praying mantis, a white one, albino. I always wanted to move. That's what I said for years and years and years. I always said that I was in love with movement. I used to like b-boys, right? Break dancers. And I used to love martial artists. I just wanted to be a martial artist so bad, you know? And they always told me no contact sports. I mean, they meant stuff that could even be any kind of physical. I mean, even stuff like soccer is probably questionable to the doctors. I played a lot of soccer throughout my life, high school, you know, and afterward, even junior high a little bit. And, you know, I wanted to just move. I loved the idea of people who had so much control over their bodies, like a breakdancer or a martial artist. But I was told I wasn't allowed to do those things. So, in spite of that, when I got into junior high, 7th grade, I was probably 12, 13 years old, probably 12 years old. I started doing parkour. And not in this silly way, just jumping around on things. I would just do flips mostly. I would do like run up and do like a one-footed swing front flip. It's called a Webster. I did just countless Websters and front flips. We had this park by where I lived at the time, really close. Actually, our church, it just had a little park, you know, that was like part of it. And it had a little like curb drop off. It was only about this big into like the wood chips or like the mulch, you know, the landscaping type stuff underneath the playground. And I'd just run where that like the grass met that little curb that dropped only about this far into those wood chips. Run on the grass and just like hit the edge of that curb, like just jump off where the curb is really, and do a flip into that wood chips is what we called it. And I would just do that time and time and time again, and just train that flip over and over again, whether it was a Webster, a one-footed like swing front flip, or just like run up and do like a two-footed punch front flip. I would just do hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of those. I've done thousands and thousands and thousands, but within a day, I would do so many. I would just drill it over and over. And at that time, I never really got much better. And I was landing so poorly. I mean, the drop was only about this big. So you barely had any like more air time to get around. So I'd land like in a low squat basically, after doing a full over the head flip, after running, just like land in a low squat. Ugh, my knees got beat up. I did that for years. And I did it for years. So I always talk about the lacing of the shoes and how that travels up the rotations of your entire body. Well, at the time, my shoes were tied unevenly and they were laced, collapsing my arches. And so I'm landing in this like super low squat, just compressing like my glutes against my heels basically. And this is my knee joint up here, right? Every time I land those flips over and over and over and over, just I've done that thousands and thousands of times. And my knees took a beating. So I did that throughout junior high and into high school. And yeah, I'm just trying to decide what to cover really in this video, but played a lot of soccer within that time. That was really fun. But when I got to 17 years old, like similar time to when I got that pacemaker put in and then taken back out. Oh gosh. I was wearing these 6-inch leather boots. They had a heel, it was about an inch tall, full on boot sole, right? 6-inch waterproof boots. Genuine leather, barely any give in the sole, barely any give in the upper, and then I kind of wrenched them when I tied them. Tied them unevenly, and then I wrapped the laces around the back and tied them unevenly again. Okay, reinforcing this terrible pattern that I'm always helping people get out of just by tying your shoes evenly, okay? So I'm doing flips at like 17 years old, 18, 19 years old, 20 years old, wearing these boots. I wore these boots for about 4 years, but there was like 3 years, if you're talking about like every single day wear, it's probably about 3 years within those 4. Like, if you were to count the days is what I mean, to make up how often I wore those boots. And within that time, I was still doing flips, I was still playing soccer, and still landing flips pretty darn poorly. I mean, most all my flips, I landed like that. So squatted, man. So, gosh, bro, I ended up with so much pain in my knees. I went to physical therapy for months and months and months, and I paid for my physical therapy as I'm pretty much an adult, but still, you know, didn't want to. And I paid a couple $1,000 at least. I don't know, somewhere between $1,000 and like $3,000, I think. Oh, it was more than 1,000. It was probably $2,000 or $3,000 for physical therapy out of my own pocket, like as a 17-year-old kid. I think I was 17 still. And dude, my knees were just so terrible. I mean, I could not even get out of a chair without using pretty much only my arms to push me up. Like, I could barely put any weight on my knees. And I remember being in junior high, right? More like 12, 13, 14. That's the ages I was in junior high. I remember those years. There's some times I'd go to junior high, same thing. I couldn't even get down into the like desk chair. I couldn't even do that without using my arms entirely. Like, my knees, I could barely put any weight on my legs to lower myself into the chair or to push myself out of the chair. There's just so much pain, but I would just keep doing the flips. So I remember, yeah, now go back to 17 years old. I was talking about junior high right there, back to 17. Graduated high school at 17 years old for kind of reference. I was going to physical therapy and I was also working at that time. And gosh, man, my knees. I was working at a pizza place, like a more like handmade kind of pizza place, like personal pan type of thing, like walk down the line, tell us what you want type of thing. I was the oven dude a lot of the time. Most of the time, I'd have like 15 to 20 pizzas in this like oven. You gotta like make sure you get the ones out that were in there first to like make sure they don't burn. Got to get everything done proper. And I mean, it wasn't like a fast food pizza place. Kind of was, but a little bit better than that. It had this big old open like real oven, you know, take the pizza in with the big spatula, and like the people are watching you from the line. It was kind of cool. So I'm standing on my feet the whole time, which should be fine. As I've mentioned, which standing's a normal function for the human body, but my knees, man, because I'd go to physical therapy first, and then I'd go there. And at the same time, I was doing a lot of workouts. So my shoulders were getting destroyed. Now I know. At the time, I didn't really know so much, but now I know, and that's what I talk about all the time within my videos, how if you have like a knee problem, it's not your knee, it's either your ankle or your hip. If you have a shoulder problem, it's probably your hips, but if it's your hips, it's probably stemming from something in somewhere, right? So my shoulders, because I was doing a ton of shoulder presses and push-ups and tricep extensions, tricep kickbacks, a lot of stuff within the shoulder in positions that I didn't know what to do or how to exactly do it. I was trying to have proper form, but it wasn't proper form, and it couldn't have been because the clothing I was wearing. I was also wearing oversized clothing. I mean, I remember I could do dips, man. I could do full-on deep dips. I could do 4 sets of 10 to 12 dips, man. I think 12. 4 sets of like 10. Well, yeah, maybe like first couple of sets were like 12, and then the second couple of sets were like 10. I could do 4. I was actually pretty, you know, I was at that time, but had a lot more muscle mass than I do now. Which now I talk about, it's not about muscle mass, not about strength, it's about the body's positioning, which is what I wish I knew then, because my body wasn't in the best position, but I could do a lot of dips. I was also going to physical therapy and had so much pain. You know, they call it impingement, you know, shoulder impingement. Really all that means is your shoulder's in a bad position, kind of an external rotation, and it can't lift. You know, I always talk about internal rotation and rotations, you know, but so what I mean with talking about the shoulders is when I was going to therapy, physical therapy, it was for both my shoulders and my knees. So I'd get like the tape crossed on my shoulders, right, and on my knees, and I'd be at work doing the pizzas, and in that same time, I don't know for sure if it actually was fractured, but they said I fractured my wrist, because right around that time, there was like this wall around our cemetery where I lived at the time. It was like a probably 3-foot wall, and it was like this cool like brick wall with like this topper on it, and I was like on the top of that topper of the wall, and it had like these like things every, I don't know, 6 feet or something, right? And then there's like the wall and like this thing, and then like the wall just to kind of make it more decorative. So I was on top of the wall, and I was stepping on it, and then I stepped onto that. I'll finish this, but this isn't actually what happened to my wrist. I stepped onto that little thing and did a 1-footed front flip of Webster off of it. No, same moment, but that's not what hurt my wrist. I was on top of that wall as if this bench were the wall, standing on it, and I just like dropped down onto the wall, like into a push-up position with my hands on the edges of it, but my hands slipped off of the edge, right? And I heard like a little like crack thing in my wrist. I don't know if my wrist just popped and it did it in a position it shouldn't have, and then it was like swelling because it was just something happened to it, or if it actually got fractured. I don't know, but I went to somebody, and an orthopedic surgeon type person, right? They put my wrist in a brace for 6 weeks, a little over a month. So that's when I was making the pizzas. That's why I mentioned that. Also, just it's to do with the body, right? So my body. So yeah, that was at the same time as the shoulders and knees physical therapy. My body was just going through stuff, man. I was kind of putting it through stuff that it shouldn't have had to go through, at least those things. So yeah, anyway, my knees were so bad at that time, 17 years old, that I went to an orthopedic surgeon. I was like, look, I gotta know what's going on. Got x-rays and stuff. I'm not gonna get into this whole long story about it, but basically what they told me is that if you've heard about runner's knee or chondromalacia patella, you know, IT band syndrome, the cartilage on the back of your kneecap wearing down, it really, again, it's not your knees problem, it's the shoes. And that's what I always talk about. That's why I have my shoelacing technique, and that's why I say to tie them evenly over toward the insides, just to allow your whole body to be even, right? Gosh, man, but I had that. The symptoms of what they're calling what they call it, you know. My knees hurt so bad, and this orthopedic surgeon, he told me that I'd have to get perforations in my IT band. There's a band of like thick tissue on the outside of your leg that connects your hip down to, it comes into your knee and inserts here. And it's kind of like your Achilles tendon, right? It's like a tendinous tissue, like a thick, super durable type of thing on the outside of both your legs. And this orthopedic surgeon told me that I'm gonna have to get perforations, like holes, drilled along there to elongate it. Is that crazy or what? To allow like more room in there because my knees were all bound up was, you know, basically what they're saying. So it's not true. Don't listen to doctors. Don't listen to doctors. Pray about it. Take a step back. Don't listen to doctors. I don't have a pacemaker anymore. I never had to get this weird perforation surgery he's talking about in my IT bands. And like I said, I did 3 gainers the other day, and you see in my modern content, it's August 31st, 2024. Probably mention that at the end, but in case I don't, right? So you see how I can operate now. I haven't had any kind of surgeries. A lot of times doctors are trying to help. A lot of times, really what doctors are, I'm gonna sit for a second because listen to this and hear it how it is, not an opinion of mine. Doctors are businessmen. Doctors make a lot of money. Okay, so if they can put a surgery in somebody, on somebody, if they can do an operation, they get paid. Okay. Also, a lot of times you go into a doctor and they don't actually diagnose you very much. You tell them a few symptoms and they're like, oh, you have this. And sometimes they don't even look at your body. Okay. Now, doctors performed some pretty major operations on my heart. And I'm not trying to say that it's bad to go to doctors or that they are never a good thing to have. Okay, I have some experience with some things on both ends. All right, so just pray about it. And usually, as in most of the time, you don't need what the doctors are telling you that you need. Okay, and what I said at the beginning of this video, I have context on all ends to be able to say those kind of things, okay? So, yeah, that's very important to say. A lot of times doctors are not honest, because if they're not honest and they tell you there's something wrong with you that isn't wrong, they get paid, okay? They don't have a job if they don't have operations to do on people, okay? If they just send you home and say, you're fine, just rest and ice and whatever they want to say, right? Then they pretty much don't make any money. They need to give you medication, give you an operation, give you some kind of therapy that you have to come back for. They need to do those kind of things to make money. So, all right, that's just the truth. So, anyway, point is, I came home from that orthopedic surgeon crying because my knees hurt bad, and I didn't want to get a big surgery on both of my legs, perforations in my natural body. Like, what are you talking about? It should just work, right? The answer is yes, and I'm, again, living proof of that. That's why I make these videos, to help others. My life is going the way it's going, but I make these videos to help others to be able to know the things that I've been able to know, and to be able to hopefully avoid things like I was able to do, right? I was able to avoid surgeries they said I needed. I hope people, through my information giving to them, can do the same if they don't actually need the surgery, right? So, okay. Anyway, so that's a lot of stuff that's going on when I was 17 years old. Yeah. And that's the majority of my body's stuff was at those younger ages. I'm 25 now. But that's a lot to go through, man, physically, you know. I mean, the point of the story is my physical situations, right? Kind of leading me to why I do what I do. I think it's important to say scar tissue is something that happens, right? If your body has like an incision made, it heals, but the skin is no longer the same. Now it's what they call scar tissue. Oh, this is a good example. I mean, look at the fingers in between. It's like thicker than like over here or over here, right? Right in the center where that would have been like severed, it grows back thicker, less pliable, right? My pacemaker specifically, when I was talking about all that shoulder pain I was having, yeah, a lot of it was just because my hips were in such a bad position, stemming from my shoelaces, serious, and my oversized clothing. I wore oversized clothing for like so long. I've talked about, you know, I pretty much always wore hand-me-down clothing, which there's nothing wrong with if it fits, but it just never fit me. I never knew what it meant, at least for like a lot of years of my life. I didn't know what it meant to have clothing that fit. So I had like extra large clothes. I've mentioned I wear mediums now, and I'm only older now, and you know, so a lot of it was those kind of things. But also, when I was going to physical therapy for shoulders, it was after this pacemaker surgery, right? I didn't have it, like they put it in, took it out, but the scar tissue is right, like I said, it's like right, they put it pretty much right underneath your collarbone. And your collarbone, you probably can't really see, I'm putting my finger on my collarbone right now. Your collarbone is what allows your shoulder to move. Like, see, oh, there we go. See how my finger's moving? It's directly on top of my collarbone. So it's actually my collarbone that I'm showing moving, the movement that my finger's doing, okay? Your collarbone comes up and, you know, it's part of your shoulder. And if there's a ton of scar tissue right here, because they dug in there and stuck a little box in there and, you know, anyway, that limited the range of motion in my shoulder, not just for that time, but up until still, right? Even this morning, I was laying in bed, I woke up and I was like just taking my fingers and just really massaging out that scar tissue because it kind of put me like this, which is the same patterning that I always show, right? It's crazy how so many things play in the exact same patterning. So to allow this to open up and get this shoulder to internally rotate, that scar tissue needs to be like as malleable as it can. So yeah, I'm still kind of doing that, man. I mean, it's many years later. It's like 8 years later or something like that. So 8 or 9 years later, I don't know. It's just scar tissue can really be worked out, as in physically like rubbed on with your fingers to like loosen up the gristle almost, if you will, right? I mean, it just gets very stiff. So that's the thing with major surgeries, is they've actually altered your body. And so those things, some of them just have to stay with you for life. Some of the things that have happened, like the fact that my sternum isn't quite how it would have been if it never got cut, right? Yes, it's healed, but it had been completely separated at one point, to where even though it's healed, it's not quite the same as if nothing ever happened, right? That's why those major surgeries, it's more than just the moment of the surgery. It's actually an effect through your entire life. And don't worry about that, just as I don't need to worry about this. But I mean, it really, it's different than if it were to have never have happened, right? So yeah, I'll talk about dental work a little bit that I've had, because it's also very important. I got a root canal on my front left tooth, and I've talked about this within this kind of content that I've made. I was at a trampoline park. I did a front flip 360, which I could do just fine at the time, but I had jumped off like a ledge onto the tramp and then did it. And as I came around, my feet hit the tramp, and my knees came up and my left knee hit my left front tooth, and it hurt, right? But it killed the root of the tooth, and now if there's a dead root inside there, they have to remove it, or at least it's ideal, right? So they did a root canal, and that's what a root canal is. If you don't know what a root canal means, they remove the root of the tooth. Like, you got the tooth, but inside of it there's like the thing that gives it life, because your teeth are alive in a sense, right? So they drill a hole into the center of the tooth and they pull the root out of there, and they fill that hole with like cavity material, or filling for cavities material, right? So they did that, but it was like a really traumatic thing for me, and I was not having it. And when he put the filling material in there, he didn't grind it down to be like smooth on the back, right? And your front teeth sit pretty close. They don't quite touch, but like they sit pretty close together, the bottom front teeth and the top front teeth. And those two teeth, this bottom one and that top one, weren't allowed to for years. And not only that, I had like other fillings that were misaligning my jaw too, but so it's kind of all playing into itself. I've just already covered this in another video, but the point is, the jaw stabilizes the body big time, and stabilizes the head and the spine, and affects your entire body where your jaw sits. So dental work can really affect that. So I had that really poorly done. I don't want to say it was the person's fault who did it, because I don't know if it was, or if he didn't notice that it wasn't cleanly shaven down, or I don't know what it was, but it's like a decade or more that I had to deal with a jaw like this, and that affects your breathing big time, and that affects like your emotions big time. When you can't breathe, you can't clench your jaw together anywhere near normal, because there's something in there that's not natural. And that's one of the biggest things out of all the things physically within my body that have affected me. That root canal could be the biggest, bigger than an open heart surgery. Just what that does to your whole neck, man. It feels like you're suffocating all the time when you're being forced to hold your jaw like this. And you can see it in photos or videos of me from the past. My jaw is like over here. Put my shoulder in the same patterning as just about everything else that I ever show. My whole face over here wasn't even allowed to like work. This side was like, gosh, that was the worst thing. Out of all the things that happened to me physically, that was the one that affected me the most. That little root canal on the front tooth. If you do see photos or videos, you see like this front tooth was so dark. It wasn't anything besides excess filling material that you could see from the front, because it looked dark from the front just because it was so thick. The light wasn't like shining through it in the same way it would without it there. That's what affected my life more than anything else that's ever physically happened. Because I went through so much emotional stuff as a teenager, even into my early 20s. I felt like I couldn't breathe. That was the biggest factor of why. It's like, that's why it's weird. You almost can't imagine something that small could affect your entire life that much. That's where my passion comes from with this stuff. That's why I sound kind of accusacious at times. That's why I get really bold, because a lot of people couldn't imagine that one little tooth could cause their entire body to have problems. The respiratory system. I don't know, man. Yeah, man, a lot of my emotional stuff that I went through was just because, I couldn't even close my own mouth. I couldn't even put my jaw together. I couldn't clench my teeth or even have them rest together naturally for over a decade. I think I was 13 when that happened. I'm 25. Even last night, what I've been doing is intentionally eating chips or other things that are like really fibrous, you know, and chewing the chip between those two teeth, this tooth and this tooth, to wear down that filling material. I could probably go to the dentist and say, hey, can you file this down smooth? It should have been done over a decade ago. Just go to any dentist and say that. But, you know, I didn't even notice that it was really a problem until I started to get my body into alignment. Until last year, a year and a half ago, I got barefoot shoes and started messing with the tying and lacing of them, right? I've talked about that a lot. That's how I started with this whole journey of the human body. And then once my body started getting more into alignment, right, because this right side was out in external rotation, so my right jaw was already kind of away from where that is. Once I got this right shoe tied correctly toward the inside to allow this whole side of my body to internally rotate, it allowed that jaw to start coming more toward the center. If you look at my bite, if my teeth aren't that clean, hey, I don't care. If you look at my bite, my bottom teeth are off to the right a little bit, but again, if you look at photos or videos of me from even just a little while back, it was more like this. That's because that filling, right? I mean, everything playing into each other, but there was actually something in the way for over a decade. So I was going through a lot of stuff, and I didn't really realize what a lot of the root causes of those things were. It was that filling. Yeah, nothing has ever physically affected me more than that one little root canal. That's crazy. So anyway, yeah, because I get so bold sometimes, and I get like almost like I'm yelling. It almost seems like I'm yelling, right? At people too. I'm not. I'm yelling because I'm like, look, if somebody were to have told me that it was that simple, I guess, gosh, man, I mean, my whole life was so affected. You can't breathe if your jaw's not in at least a decent spot. You can't eat very well. You have so much neck tension, right, that travels through the rest of your whole body. It affects your sleeping. Anytime like you do anything, I mean, my posture, I know I don't use the word posture, I've mentioned that, but if we're talking about what posture is, right, I use it to describe what people are talking about when they talk about posture. Like if you're trying to sit up straight, your jaw has to be able to kind of come forward, because it needs to, and that's just how it's designed. And when there's something there, I mean, you see me, I was standing with such rounded forward like this for so long. It was that root canal. It was that excess filling material causing a gap between my two front teeth, traveling into everything. And then I'm tall too, so anytime I go to work or do just anything at all, I'm 6'2". I have to bend down to get to basically anything, right? I really do. And when you bend down, again, your jaw has to kind of come forward a little bit. You can't tuck your jaw because then you're internally rotating back here. Like you have to, I mean, it's slight, but you have to just be able to get your teeth to mesh on the front. That's really it. And mine weren't allowed to, so now I'm reaching and I can't breathe back here, right? I mean, you need to open your airway by getting your jaw where it would just sit. You know what I mean? So I just remember getting so like triggered and upset and like scared at work. Like, how am I scared? What? I remember that feeling, always being like scared and not knowing why, but it was because I couldn't breathe. Like, I go to do something, it's like, dude, this was over a decade of my life from a little root canal filling. I've been doing a lot of work on my jaw. You know, I've mentioned in recent content within this month that I've never, up until this point at least, within anything about the human body, never given a single exercise or routine or stretch. I've mentioned how we should never stretch And we shouldn't exercise just for the sake of exercising to think that it's going to do something for our bodies, right? I mean, we just need to be in a position that our bodies would naturally be in to work. That's why I do what I do within the clothing and the shoelaces. I've mentioned that. But I've been doing a lot of like massaging with my jaw to loosen it up as it's getting back into just a normal position again, right? I wouldn't call that exercising. I mean, it's like same thing with my pacemaker scar. Like, it's not exercising. Using your own fingers to do this, that's not a workout. It's not a routine. Like, you know, stuck muscles, all you're doing is just releasing muscles, and then you're done once they're released, right? Because really what it is similar to this. It's scar tissue that builds up because things are being bound into a certain position for so long. So I've been doing that a lot in my jaw, and now I have more motion in my jaw, and now my face is allowed to like work on this side. I used to be like this because it just couldn't, because this had gap, this was coming back, this was getting so bound up, right? This was down, this side couldn't come up, right? And so you'd see me, any photo, I mean, high school yearbook photos or junior high, or since then too, even last year, even just 6 months ago, you see me like this. Any photos, any videos, anything, you see me smile and like this. But now I can just a lot better smile, because also when they do a root canal, they go clear in there, man. And my nose, same thing. I mean, you can prove this for yourself if you see any videos or photos of me. If you look at my left nostril in those, it's like small, because all this was all bound up in there. I mean, they did some, like, they put shots in there, you know, to numb you. They went clear into the root of my tooth, which your front teeth go pretty much up into where your nose is, right? Like up behind where your nostril is. So my breathing, not only my neck being so affected here, but I couldn't even breathe with this left nostril. So I was breathing only through here, and then I was already over here, and then, yeah, I mean, there's just all that from one little tiny filling in one little front tooth. Yeah, I mean, when I'm talking about all the things that I can do now physically with my the rest of my body, 2 open heart surgeries has not affected me that much. As far as the way that my body's able to operate nowadays, at 25 years old, you know, decades after they happened. The first one was over 2 decades ago. The second one was over a decade ago. Well, it was actually, the second one was it was close to 2 decades ago too. I was 7 years old, right? It's like, anyway, those haven't affected me very much as of now. But this little root canal filling has made a lot of my life hell. Really. So that's why I get a little bit stern with the stuff I talk about, because I know the effect that stuff can have, and I know how sometimes you couldn't even imagine that something could be causing the problems that you're having. And so when I talk about things, and some of it's kind of far-fetched, and when I say I don't do exercise, I mean it. And I can throw a gainer. I mean, I can throw a gainer right now. I wouldn't do it on the concrete, and I'm not going to right now. It's also Sunday. But I don't exercise, and I don't stretch, I don't work out. And to everybody's own capability within their own personal body, they can have this kind of thing. And you see, if you've seen content within, I told you the date, look at content from around this time of like these videos that I've made. My body works insane. Like, if I'm an outsider looking at my own body and like the things that I'm able to do, the balance that I have, and the position and internal rotation that I have, it's crazy. But it's a natural thing as long as we can let it happen. And, you know, having that excess filling material there is essentially like not letting it happen. It's like wearing clothing with a tag in it. Same thing, right? How your teeth mesh together, and your front teeth should just have a slight gap between them and be able to sit well together. Like when I do that, this tooth is hitting that filling material, right? So much less than it ever has, but that's what I'm feeling. That little filling material in where your teeth should naturally mesh is like this little tag in the back of your shirt where your shirt should naturally mesh with your upper back and your spine. That's why I'm so big on what I do. Because that little tiny thing affected my entire life. Little tag here can affect your entire life. Big time. And that's the other thing, is if you have a tag back there, you almost can't notice this kind of thing. Because my shoulders now being able to just go where they go, my jaw can sit there. But if there's a tag there, watch my jaw. I mean, maybe you can't tell so much with the camera, but the point is, if there's a tag causing a gap back there, then there's gonna be more of a gap between my teeth, because everything's kind of in a position it's not gonna normally be in. So, that's crazy. Okay, I think it's getting close to wrapping this up. I mean, I'll go for another hour or two if I'm supposed to. I'll just kind of break through it and feel it out, but yeah, you know, I've had a lot of stuff go on, man. I've had a lot of perspective. That's how I'm able to say the things that I'm able to say. And that goes for other things in life too, you know, and the gospel is at the center of everything that I ever do. And I have a lot of perspective within that, with my relationship with Christ. Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy. I don't know, man. I mean, it's gratitude just to be able to sit here right now and just to be able to think about that little tiny feeling. I mean, it's a full-on root canal, but I mean, it's like, what, this big of a little thing within your mouth? I mean, so much anxiety was caused by that, because it's like an invasion to your natural clenching of your jaw, meshing, you know. But when you get scared, you kind of like, you know, and if you can't do that without like tucking your chin to get out of the way, because you're gonna hit something with your teeth. Your teeth don't move as far as, like, they don't give. They're like a bone. They're really hard. If there's something pretty much as hard in between them, you're trying to, like, you know, just react when you're scared, and then you close off your airway. And then now it's like you feel like you're being suffocated. That's so crazy. Just because that's an explanation of a lot of what I went through throughout my life. Because I gave into the world, and I went on mental health medication for depression and anxiety for years. 6 years of my life. And I never could tell anybody what was going on. I wasn't in the best situation dynamic growing up. I'm not gonna, get into more of that, at least in this video. That's not what this is about. But that is true. But in addition to that, and dealing with that, I just always kept saying, I'm like scared. I don't know why. I can't breathe. I don't know why. Like, I feel like I'm dying. I feel like I'm suffocating. My jaw was being forced closed, like blocking off my airway backward. Because what I've thought about is, man, if there's like some real evil going on, you know, and people are trying to like silence people or whatever, you can do something like that, you know, just like put like a thing between their teeth, and so they're constantly like this, and then like, that's been a real thought of mine, you know, like concentration camp type stuff. You know how they do certain things to like keep their slaves being their slaves, you know, or like branding type stuff, you know, like take a hot thing and I mean, that's like something that you could do to somebody and it would alter their whole entire existence as a human being on this planet. Because that's how it felt. That's how my life felt since I was 13 years old when I got that root canal. That's how it's always felt. I couldn't explain it to doctors. I couldn't explain it to a therapist. I went to a psychiatrist. I'm I am so minimal and so natural. I'm vegetarian. I don't like substances in my body besides basically natural things. I don't like substances on my body besides basically natural things. I wear 100% cotton in pretty much everything. I was just taking pills that this psychiatrist was telling me were going to help me with something. Because I felt like I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was scared, and I felt like I was doing this all the time because my teeth couldn't even touch. Because there's something in between there. I didn't know that until now, as far as like this year, 2024. From ages 16 to 22, I was on mental health medication. But it always felt physical. And I know that emotions a lot of times are something that we experience physically, but it was something I couldn't describe. And now I understand. Because driving was a huge one. Driving was always my escape. I loved to drive, but really I only loved to drive because then it was my time to be alone. That's why I loved to drive, because I didn't want to be at home in the situation. But when I'm driving, I've also talked about within my content recently that, for about 6 years-ish, at least I'd say, 6 or 7 years, I drove a manual transmission, right, with a clutch and the shifter. So when I'm in this position, reaching this arm forward, well, since I was 17 at least, I had a pacemaker scar here that was all bound up, and I couldn't actually really close this or have any range of motion. Because when you get a pacemaker, they say don't reach behind you for like 6 months when you're healing, because you don't want to like pull those leads out of your heart, is what they say. They put those leads in there and they need to like get embedded in there, and your heart tissue does the same thing. Scar tissue like holds those leads into your heart. They basically just like drill the end of that lead, which is just, again, just a wire, into your heart tissue, and then it just, scar tissue holds it there after some time. And they don't want you just, literally, this is what they said at least, they don't want you pulling those leads out of your heart. I mean, it's all within your actual chest cavity, but so I wasn't even allowed to open up the range of motion through stretching. I've mentioned it, if you have something like that, yes, stretch out the muscles. I know that I say we should never stretch, but within that I also said, certain times, of course, right? If a muscle's chronically been stuck here because you're